All righty, we'll go ahead and get you started here.
All right.
All right, so for today, we got Mr. Brandon Brumfield, really ready to give us the goods and be able to deliver on just some great content regarding embracing meaningful career change. Brandon is an um, educated man in the business field, and also have been in various roles and industries and things like that. And so he does a great work now in the customer success field, and just the experience and insights that Brendan has to offer us today are going to be impactful. And I believe we'll be able to help a lot of guys just in their journey where they're at now. I know there's a lot of people in the chat who are, in different parts of their professional development journeys. Some of them that are in between careers, some of them who are trying to find their next thing, and some who feel settled but who are kind of dabbling in multiple things. So trying to keep those options open. So I think that this is going to be really impactful and really be able to hit on a lot of those different aspects. So Brandon, I will toss it over to you and just let me know whenever you need me to change the slides. But the floor is all yours, man.
All right. Well, sounds good. Well, first of all, Jonathan, thank you for the opportunity to speak with this group of men, and as well as Jewel for getting the two of us connected. Love the opportunity to be able to really talk about something that I think is probably more prevailing and more important to folks that look like us than we may give it the room and the space to talk about. So I'm excited to talk about it, and that's really around meaningful career change. And what I'm hoping to do here is to provide folks with some suggestions. I have no solutions. I have no rules or postulates or anything like that. These are suggested thoughts and strategies around how to think about career change, making it meaningful, and really embracing it as something that's an ever-going part of our professional experience. And so, with that, we can roll on to the next slide. So, a little about me, right? Here's a brief rundown of my career. As Jonathan mentioned, I am Brandon Brumfield. My current role is I'm leading a customer success organization. So basically, I'm leading over 100 customer success program managers and engineering professionals, working with some of the largest financial services organizations in the world, delivering over $500 million in cloud consumption and cloud services revenue annually. Now, you'll see some changes in my career path over time there. That's probably putting it a little mildly. But you'll also see a skill set below. And I'll focus on the why. I've highlighted that a little bit later. You can go to the next slide. So, listen, this idea of career change is big. It's a big term, right? Careers, and more specifically, career progressions. What we do know is that they're rarely linear, right? Um, More like a lattice, if you will. And because of that, there are probably 100 different definitions of career change that you can sort of land on. But this is one that I won't read the slide to you here, but this is one that I've sort of resonates with me, right? It truly is something that could potentially involve shifting roles or functions or departments or industries or any combination of these. Again, you can kind of see that from my own career, and I'm sure others that you've engaged with. Just go to the next slide. So here are three really cool stats, right? And so these are engaging some of the folks that call themselves like the benchmark and the cornerstone measurers of careers and stoutness of careers, and they do all the surveys, and all the things around folks in career. Now, you think about this, this is probably a pretty hard job, more abstract than scientific, but it's like the weather, right? Someone tells you it's going to be 70% chance of rain, you go with that. And if it doesn't rain, you give the weatherman a pass, right? So we'll take that same methodology here, that same mentality here. So the first one, 30%, right? So according to Career Sidekick, over 30% of individuals have changed careers at some point in their professional lives. And then 20% of those workers who have changed careers have done so since the pandemic. So that's about a fifth of people who call themselves in careers have changed it since the pandemic. So call it 2020, right? That's a pretty that's pretty that's a girthy amount of people, right? That's just small. Well, here's the next one. 54.6% of those who have changed their changed their careers since the pandemic were males, right? So over half of the people who call themselves in a career has done some sort of change. Now, again, assuming that we believe that it's whether it's in an industry or a role or some combination of all that. If we think about what the definition was on the previous slide, 55% of people, males, since the pandemic has done something that fits in that definition. Now, this third stat, which is probably not as it's not a direct statistic of people changing careers, but I do believe that it's important because it denotes how relevant the concept of career change or career management are to people who look like us, right? So, and this basically says as of a year ago, a third, 33% of Black men employed in the fields that we generally sort of identify ourselves with, um, or a third of Black men are employed in these sort of spaces, right? So that's up from a fifth. So that's a substantial increase, almost 10% increase from prior to 2023. And I think that's important because these are the people, right, who define themselves as in a career. And so a third of us in these careers, right, a third of Black men are in these careers, and 55% of us are predicted to change our careers, right? So that's sort of the way I'm looking at kind of piecing this together. So this is a thing. And there's a lot of smart people that are really getting their heads around the best ways to go about doing this. So, next slide. 5 common reasons for people wanting career change. Now, again, if you look at this, man, I'd be interested in, as folks review the recording and understand the slides a little better. I'd be interested in, how we think about this and if these 5 reasons are something that reflects accurately through our lens. I would submit that, ironically enough, these 5 are probably relevant in some way, shape, or form. Maybe not all 5. Maybe a segment of these 5 are probably relevant, no matter what diaspora or slice of society that you take. Right? These are usually some common reasons that we think about career changes. Salary, career satisfaction, career advancement, meaningful work. All those feel to be pretty common. Now, if I put my another hat on, I'm going to propose that there's a 6th reason that might be on this list for Black men. And I'd love to hear, again, as people kind of consume this, I'd love to hear thoughts on this. I believe that there's probably a 6th one on here. As people like us, progress and plan for progression in our career, we tend to act on anticipation of headwinds, that may be occurring, if we see organizational dynamics underway, or if the industry's starting to shift or it's under some pressures or threats, we're probably a little less prone to wait it out. Right? We get planning. We start planning. We start moving a little differently because we know how these things can typically look for folks like us, right? And how these things can impact folks like us. When they say like when the world gets a cold, black folks get fevers or the flu or something like that or what have you. So I would actually submit that that there's probably a sixth one on here that's probably along the lines of uh, anticipation due to experience. All right, you can go to the next slide. So here are 5 useful strategies, and these are in no way ranked. They're not all encompassing. They're not together. You can peel them apart. You can use 1 or 2 of these. You can use none of these. You can use all 5 of these, right? But I'll walk through what each of these are and what I think about as a strategy for each of these. So one is think about what you're good at and how do you equate that to a passion. And the reason why I submit that is because it's easy to get to demonstrate passion about the things that we easily are inclined to excel at. The better you are, the better you want to be, right, at something. And so what I'm submitting is that we sort of harness that and really build that into a passion, something that we can begin to get. Like for take myself for instance. There was at one point in my life I had no concept, no idea early on in my career of what it meant to think through customer life cycles, customer journeys, transformational, whether it was customers going through digital transformations in the early 2010s, or customers going through, or organizations going through work style or work life transformations here in the early part of this decade and up till now. But I've learned that I have I am good at. I'm good at mapping out and coordinating with people, all right, about what their end to end sort of thinking should be about how they want to transform, how they want to do something different, and understanding the why behind that. And then I found myself becoming really good at it to the point where it is now a passion of mine. So how do you harness what you're good at, what you have a natural inclination to be good at, and equate that into sort of a passion of yours? So that's the first pillar. The second pillar is to be very little about this, right? Don't be afraid to imitate, if you will, right? Find those folks that are doing what you want to do, excelling in what you want to do, and they're doing what you want to do, and they're doing it well, and then model them, right? Follow them if they're on social media. Reach out to them if there's some sort of way to do that. Buy their books, read their white papers, do the things that they do. Try to emulate those things. Leverage your transferable skill sets. So you've heard this term, I'm sure, throughout the course of your career about transferable skill sets, almost to the point where it's probably a little bit overused at this point. And what I like to call it more so are like sub capabilities, right? So there are some capabilities that you acquire and that you build over time that become foundational across any number of careers. So on the first slide, you saw where I had mentioned these skill sets, and they're generally like around the ability to be able to take big problems and make them consumable, right? Build build logic and principles from things that I've learned. Program management, highly analytical, very analytical skill sets that are very analytical capabilities that I built very early on in my career as an engineer. Like those are the type of things that are good transferable skills. What organization has leaders or have effective and good leaders, I should say, that aren't analytical and are able to understand the details of what drives business decisions and progress against goals, right? What leader of any sort of capacity aren't are not able to take learnings from the past and build principles to move forward with? What leader is not able to um, uh, sort of focus maniacally on what it looks like to see success their customers successful, right? So these are things that you can, these are skill sets that you can acquire without necessarily being like a leader. You can acquire them in doing a role, in some role, whatever role they are. But understand and identify what those sub capabilities are that you're building, and make sure that you're leveraging those across skill sets. Make sure that you're demonstrating that and you're putting that out there. The fourth pillar, the bottom left, is it's pretty much self-explanatory. Like, you want to always invest in yourself. You want to know more. You want to know what's attractive. If you know that you want to be, I don't know how many sports fans are out there or what have you. The World Series is upon us now with the Yankees and the Dodgers. Um, if there are 28 teams or 29 teams or something like that in major leagues right now. So 20, let's just say there's 28. So 26 teams are not playing right now, right? How many players of those 26 teams are not doing something right now to improve their skill, right? To make sure that they're ready for the next season. Pitchers are pitching right now. They may be down in the Dominican Republic, they may be off somewhere in Arizona, but they're working on pitching right now. Batters are batting right now, right? So it never stops. Always continues, right? You know what good and what attractive looks like, and you always want to do the thing that it takes to do that. So you always want to continue to focus on that. And then one, which is one that's like really near and dear to me, is that I think all of us should establish this professional board of directors, right? So you think about what a board of directors do. They set performance requirements for an organization. They serve as an ambassador for the organization outwardly, and they invest in the organization, right? They pony up the money, right? They're big. They're usually the largest investors, the largest shareholders in the company. So, what is your own personal board of directors, or what's those performance require? Who's setting those performance requirements for you and holding you accountable, right? So if the CEO, you're the CEO of you've come out and you've said, I want to go do this thing X, right? And then you've set out how you're going to go and do X. These three things you're going to go and do. Who's requiring you to go do those? Who's holding you accountable to go do those? And who's serving as an ambassador for you, right? Who's your sponsor when you're not in the room? Who's promoting you into these areas as you're supposed to be? So, like, establishing these professional board of directors is really important as you think about these career changes. This is not a terminal thing. This is not a terminal list, but it's ever and it's ongoing. So those are my suggested 5 strategies. And again, we can argue and take the kind of discussion about, what should these be there or should they not be there, and I'm happy to have that conversation. But these are just, again, these are strategies that I found useful. We can go to the next slide. All right, so that's the meat and potatoes of what I have. All right. One thing that just sort of kind of continues to reign true for me is like this always, when I put this down on, when I look at this on paper, it always looks and feels like hard work. You know what I mean? I also have a day job, and I've got a life, and I've got this and I've got that, and I've talked to 20 people in my career, and they all tell me to do these things or some flavor of these. Um, what does this look like on a, if I want to do this consistent, what are the things that like help me get comfortable. Talk to me about getting comfortable um, about this because it feels uncomfortable and hard, and especially about keeping the energy behind this consistently. So uh, I'm looking to see if anybody else has either a perspective on that, or if you feel like this that's a thing that it's a tough thing to do, um, and kind of your experiences as well.
Yeah, I just looking at this, Brandon, and just thinking through how that is because career change, especially when it's frequent, can, I would imagine, can be pretty, stressful and, um, maybe even just taxing. And because, once you start something, depending on the industry or the organization, you're having to learn all their protocols, learn all their procedures, or, if you decide to, kind of take the entrepreneurship route, you're now trying to figure out how to do everything on your own and, learning all these different things because so many different industries and programs and businesses and organizations have different ways of running things, right?
Yep,
So that's a having to learn that, and then what if that doesn't work out, and then you go to the next thing, and then what if you're like, hey, I like aspects of that, but and trying to find the thing. So I think part of keeping the, I mean, if I had to say, I would say part of keeping the energy behind it consistently is trying to pull the good from all of it and seeing everything as a gift and not thinking that if the career change didn't work out, or hey, if it didn't work out in this field, that it was a failure. You know what I
yep,
mean? Like it was a failure, it didn't work, I'm not good enough, or this wasn't for me. It's like, those
that's good.
things
That's a good point.
happen, but there's good that can be pulled from it that you can now use to propel yourself to the next thing, and
That's
you can
good.
use a lot of those things as a stepping stone for where you're going to go to next. And there's aspects of that career that you were in that um could provide a useful skill set. You put your skill set at the beginning of the slides there, right? Like those are things that you pulled from other jobs that you did, you developed that skill, and then you moved on to the next thing. So I think that's part of keeping the energy, is just always finding, what's the good thing that I got from this that I could take into the next role to help me be more successful from there.
That's a really good point, and one that I would, if we were to do a part two of this, I think it's important to tap into with the group, which is one could look at this. So I'm a believer that if you're going to do anything, you're going to have to do it intentionally, right? So I submit at the beginning of this discussion that this is a um, this is something that has to be done consistently, and like there's no terminal state to this, right? There are things that you're doing on a consistent basis to always have make sure you're prepared, right, for the possibility or for the event of some change in your career. What I would love to be able to uncover with the group is this notion that if I am focused on, what a change in my career would look like, and I'm doing these strategies on a consistent basis, am I submitting to myself that I'm like am I preparing for my inevitable failure? Like, so am I claiming that I am anticipating that I will fail at this at some point. And so I'm preparing to make a change. And like unpacking that a bit, by no means am I saying that is the thing, but I do believe that that's a real thing that a lot of brothers may be out there struggling with, in that we get dogged, and there's nothing wrong with determination, right? Determination to be successful and do the job well. That's something I wake up every day as a principle. Um, but I don't think it has to be a either or, right? I think it can be a I think it could be a both and, right? You can be determinative about how successful you're going to be in role, and at the same time understand that there are there are dynamics outside of your control, right? For whatever reasons that there may be, or there may be desires that change, or whatever it is that will necessitate a career change, and you always want to be prepared for that. Um, but I'm glad you brought up that notion of failure, because that's something that's probably a real feeling that we should tap into at some point.
No, I think that's great, Brandon. There's a lot that's coming up for me, and I want to, I think that this would be a good question to kind of tackle and unpack a little bit more, just kind of from your own experience of what you've been through as far as career changes and just the different climates and things. What do you think are the things? Because obviously we saw the aspects of it that were, here are the common things that cause people to want to, advance in a career or, change their careers or what have you. But what would you say, just from your experience, what were the things that were for you? I'd love to hear a little bit more of your kind of story of, and how that can relate of just how do you know it is time for a change?
Yep.
How do you know
Yep.
what are like red flags? Like, hey, if this is happening, you might want to start thinking about this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or also on the flip side of that, if we were to do the other side of it, how do you know when it's a good place to stay?
That's right. Absolutely.
How do you know
So
how do you know if it's a good place to stay? How do you know if you found the right thing for you?
yeah, no, that's a very good point. So the good questions. So for me, self-admittedly, I haven't always been prepared for the career change that might have been, upon me, if you will. So um the way that I've learned about these strategies, right, for career change, a lot of them have been by hard knocks, right? So the I made a career change coming out of um, an organization I was working with. So I worked for Dell EMC. I was heading up their professional services organization. We had formed a joint venture with it was like EMC, VMware, and Cisco. And so we had there was like this sort of cloud computing type organization that was formed, and I had come there um, out of working for Coca-Cola, right? But again, transferable skill sets, right? To head up their professional services organization and their consulting organization there. And it was a good run, but there was some red flags that I didn't pick up. Right, I was a little younger in my career. Um, you these type of organizations are formed um, to make a lot of money and then figure out what to do next with them. Right, so you go into these organizations with that mentality, and I did not. So there came the time where it was like, hey, listen, we're up for acquisition, and there are some roles that are duplicative, right? And mine was one of them. So 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 there's a scenario where I had to learn that a year ago I should have been thinking about this, right? I should have been thinking about isolating my transferable skill sets and highlighting those. I should have been thinking about investing in a real stout board of directors, professional board of directors, right? I should have been thinking about how to hone in on my skills and making sure that I was continuously growing. Um, and I had immersed myself into the role and had done a very good job of it. But even that didn't do that. So that you talk about like an experience. What were those things that gave me the idea that hey, it's probably time to think about a change and a career change. And so I left there and I got into the consulting space for a little bit before joining Unisys in a similar role. But the point there is the the flags that were, or the sort of the warning signs that I'm now prognosticating that we should be aware of and we should be knowing, I had no idea back then. And so I'm kind of talking from learned experiences, if you will. Now, how do you know when you should stay somewhere? All right, when you're in a good place. All right. And I think it's a similar, right? It's a similar assessment that you would go through as if you were ready for a change. So I gave you like five reasons people look for people generally start thinking about a career change. I would submit that if those five don't exist, then you're probably in a decent place, right? If your salary is commensurate with your role and you're good there and you see good opportunity for career management and career progression and all those things are sort of satisfied and checked, then you may be in a good place, right? And listen, in this discussion, what I don't want there to be a takeaway is that one should be on a constant hunt, right? You should always kind of be perusing the landscape, looking for the next thing. No, I don't promote that. What I do promote though is that you have built a lifestyle around your profession, where you're focused on one, two, three of these strategies, or maybe a set of strategies of your own that will allow you the best way to pivot into a career change motion should there need to be
Well, I'll throw this out here,
one.
Brandon. I'll throw this out here. I want to just kind of pick your brain a little bit because I think it would be helpful, and I love what you're sharing, by the way, too, and just your story. Um, there are two sides of it, right? So there's because it's interesting. You're like, you don't want to come across as like, hey, like always be on the hunt. But I think that there's a part of our generation, especially for the younger crowd, where it's like staying somewhere for longer than 6 months for some people is a struggle, right?
Yeah.
You start that job, or hey, like I'm in this role now, and you think that it's going to be great, and then you're like, I think I'm going to go do something else. Everybody's different. For
Sure.
myself, I mean, I've been with my company for it'll be 4 years in February. And as a 25-year-old, that's not common. That's not something that is happening a lot. I feel like that people who are in like their I'd say like their 50s, their 60s, their 70s, like when they started working, it was like they were at the same place for 20 years, right? 20 years, 30 years. So not that, hey, maybe always be on the hunt, but I also think there's some aspects where I've also seen resumes where it's like, hey, every 2 years, you're like moving into something different. Every 2 years, you're rolling into maybe either a different career, or maybe you're kind of moving up the ladder, or maybe you're moving into a different department. Maybe 1 year, a couple years that person was in the sales department, and then a couple years out of it they were doing training, and then a couple years out, what I mean. So I'm just curious on your thoughts of that, that dynamic with people and what they're dealing with personally, of what do you think the mindset should be,
Yeah.
and how do you think that should be navigated? Where are there benefits to maybe being on the hunt more, and where are there benefits to being more stationary and being present with where they're at?
Jacob put in the chat two things that I think are really important, to kind of consider here. One is diversify your portfolio, and listen, that can be done any number of ways, right? I do believe that the long gone the days, or it's very rare, where you can go somewhere and make a career out of, like, 20, 30 years in your career out of one place. But the other thing is too, is generally speaking with this audience of highly motivated, highly fueled, executive pursuing men, you're typically going to find that the sort of the character alignment of folks like us are ones that are like go-getters, right? So these aren't the ones that are going to kind of park it in a role in a place for 30 years, allow those golden handcuffs to get slapped on, or whatever the case is, and sort of ride it
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
So I don't, I'm not a proponent of it. Like I haven't done that in my career, as you can see. So like it doesn't necessarily work for me or folks like us. But I do believe that there is value in continuing to enrich your portfolio of experiences. I do believe it's really important too, as you sort of build out your board of directors for your profession, your professional board of directors, um, that you get the varied experiences, and that could be internal to where you are, that can be somewhere else. But I don't. I would agree with you that probably for the group of folks that we surround ourselves with every day, it's probably a little less of a thing. I think Jacob has his hand up also.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sorry. My kids are in their gymnastics classes, so I stepped out for a second.
Mhm.
But yeah, I'm very big on the who you talk to, what you talk about, and the environments that you're around. I think that is very, very important to, especially us as Black men. How do we move forward in a lot of things that we do?
Yeah.
So when we look at like our career progression, who are you talking to? What are the conversations that you have? What are the environments that you're in? Like you have this BEM community. Like, do you have something like this in your state, in your city? If it's not BEM, how are you plugging into other organizations that may have other people that you could possibly bring value to, and they bring value to you, bring value to them, and they bring value to you as you move forward, like especially when you're looking at other people that have been either switching jobs every 2 years or they've been in a company for over 10 years, you got to understand that everybody's story is a little different and you don't know what was going on behind the scenes. So you
Yep.
may have that person that is able to, they may have that network of, let's say we have a bunch of, somebody's a COO and they have access to other COOs. They have built relationships and a rapport that now, if they wanted to switch every year, all it takes is a phone call. Or if they were to get let go, all it takes is a text message.
That's good.
There's ways to pull that off, but guess what? It's all about the relationships that you build. And through those relationships, that's when you start. And when I was talking about diversify your portfolio, you diversify your portfolio just like in that space where honestly, for me, it's not about thinking about a job or career. It's really about like how do you give yourself the right exposure. Like, I think a lot of times we're looking at the flowery things where it's like, oh, somebody can just skip a job and they may have gotten a better title, but they were getting paid less than they were before. Somebody may have became a director, but as an individual contributor, you was making way more. There's
Yep.
so much to it, and guess what? Unfortunately, you may have people that are in those C suites that are not enjoying their lives. They may
Yep.
give you the look of it, but hey, they're not enjoying it. But you want to put yourself in a space where you could properly, like, honestly, I'm all about well-being. Like, make sure you're taking care of yourself as you progressing, as you're pushing your career, as you're getting better at family, as you're getting in your relationships. Like, all that stuff plays a role. And being able to have those conversations with folks that can pour into you the way that you need to, because that's what we as Black men be missing out on. We're so ambitious that we miss out on the people that really matter. And as we miss out on the people that really matter, we move to the top, and then we're now lonely, and we're still trying to figure out what's going on. And we start asking questions like, "Oh man, shoulda, woulda, coulda." You have the ability to make an impact in yourself and others, and also be poured into. So, and I think, I just think overall, that's what I was pretty much trying to say. I hope that made sense.
No, it does. It does. It does, Jacob. And I mean, listen, this is where um having a community of folks. I called it a board of directors. We can call it a community. We can call it a community, something like this, whatever that looks like for you. This is where that becomes so important because having a sounding board on decisions. Listen, I don't make and I would not encourage anyone to make like career change or job changing decisions lightly. Like it's a really big thing. It's something that's going to go on your resume, especially if you're serious about it. So you should have an end goal in mind. It should be something, of some sort of progression of some level, that type of thing. What I would also say though is you've got to be smart and you've got to be intentional about it. I've seen where folks have been called, sort of categorized as like job hoppers, right? Where all the different jobs every year, every 2 year reflects negatively to some organizations, right? I've seen others where diversity of experience worked in their favor, right? So, I mean, I think like it's when you're making such important, impactful, subjective, like there's no answer to this, and that's kind of what I led with this is right. There's no do this and that will make it work. Like there is none of that, right? But there are strategies, right? Strategies are not answers; they're strategies, right? And so I think like that's the part, Jacob, to your point, that you have to be very, very intentional and keying on is, do you believe in what you're doing? Do you believe it's going to be the right thing long term? And then what does your trusted space, your community, your BEM, your board of directors, what do they have to say about it? Because these are the folks that you're going to go back to like CEOs do, right? Whenever there's like this acquisition that's on their mind, right? And their C-suite is all aware of it and no one else is. They go to the board, right? And they talk to the board about what it is that they want to go do, and the board sort of gives them like thoughts or ideas, and very rarely does a board say no, right? But they'll help them lay out if you do this, expect this. Here's how I can help you. I won't help you. Whatever the case is, that I think is important. So
I got two questions for you, Brandon, and we'll stick and move here. But Jacob, I love that you shared that. And it was triggering something for me in my head. I wanted to ask this because I heard Jewel ask this question on his podcast. So I'm gonna ask you the same question, Brandon. In your career change, your career path, how many of your roles, or just kind of when you think about all the roles you've done, what part of them were, you applied for them, and what part of them were recommendations from somebody else inside of your network, your community, that someone either recommended you for the job, or someone said, hey, you might be good at this, or someone said, hey, I know this person at this, job, and this might be good for you, whatever that might be. I'd be curious to kind of know from your story, what that's looked like for you.
That's a good question. Oh, I'd probably say just, this isn't a scientific answer. I don't, I haven't done the math, but I'm just saying based off of just how I can think about it, it's probably like 60-40, like 60% I sought it out, 40% sort of recommended, unpublished. You
Yeah.
should get after this,
Yeah.
that type of thing.
Yeah. I mean, that right there.
Yeah. And what I'll say is though, I've never gotten a role. I've never gotten a role without there being a knowledge or desire that I'm open and ready for something else. So I've never had anyone come to me and talk me into wanting to do something else. It always has been known that I was ready for another opportunity. And then the 40% comes in and says, okay, hey, I heard you last year, or I heard you, last month or last quarter or whatever. I heard you. Here's something that I think you should. So that's kind of how it's worked. But I've never had anyone walk up out of the blue and say, hey, I think this is best for your next move in your career. I've always had to define that for folks.
Yeah. No, I think it's really good. Even, I mean, that's still quite a lot of opportunities just from people, seeing something in you and being able to, just help give that guidance and point in the direction and put your name out there. And like you mentioned, who are the people that are talking about you when you're not in the room?
When you're
Right.
not in the room.
That's
right.
so important. Last thing that I wanted to just touch on, because I think it'll be really important and a good way to kind of segue. is you mentioned these board of directors, the people in your life who are striving and pushing you into these things. How would you go about deciding who those people are? And if you want to, feel free to speak on who some of those people are in your life and what that looks like for you. Love to hear that.
Yeah, that's a good question as well.
I can take a stab at it.
Please, Jacob. Yeah.
Yeah. So your board of directors, I think of this as people above you, your level, and below you. There are people that know you well enough that you don't want to hear what they got to say because it's the full blown truth. Those are some of the people that you need. You also need to know some of those people that are smarter than you. You cannot be the smartest one in the room. You need people, and this is intellectually, this is street smarts, this is, as far as your career progression, like literally the diversification of portfolio. Find people in those different rooms, in those different areas of your life, whether if it's older, your age, younger, diversified. I have mentees that honestly, I gotta be on point because they just look at everything I do. So as soon as they hear that, I tell them, "Hey, you know what? We're supposed to join this meeting," and they're like, "Yo, where are you?" They make that a big deal because they like, "Look, I get this win off of my mentor." So what that does is that put me on my toes, and I'm like, "All right, I'm in this meeting 15 minutes before it starts." With those my age, and they're on different levels as well. Some of them are making way more, some are making way less. And for me, it's always at that point where I always got to remember that we're all human. So you got to get to those moments where you get so humble enough where your pride and ego goes to the side and you are willing to be poured into. Like you're okay with saying, "Hey, I don't know. I want to figure it out." And I'm willing. So finding those people, it's a broad range of them. Like, I mean, you got to challenge yourself on a consistent basis. Honestly, when it comes to picking those folks, this could be former managers. This could be people at your school, people that you know for sure that has your best interest at heart and are willing to help you thrive.
Yeah, that's 100% correct. And I think like the other point I would say is just like any other good board of directors, right? I think Stephen A. Smith says it'd be like it's fluid, right? So someone who was on your board yesterday might not be a good fit for your board today. It doesn't mean that they're not there. It's just you're looking for a different thing, right? Most board of directors of Pfizer aren't all pharmaceutical people, right? They're usually the largest stakeholders in the company, right? So that could be any number of different type of backgrounds and whatnot that are ready to offer advice in some way or manner. So someone who's got like equity and a stake in the game, right? And they're wanting to they've got a vested interest in seeing you be successful, and so there's that as well. I think Jewel has a question.
Hey, fellas, fantastic presentation. The fact that we get this information for free right into our phone is phenomenal. So, yeah, guys, listen to the replay. Definitely, I hope you're getting a lot of value from this. I'm gonna I'm gonna get a little free coaching here. Is that okay?
Yeah, please.
All right. So this is perfect too. So we've got this program that we want to roll out called BEM Gold. And we did some research. Do not quote me on this, that there were 600,000 Black male managers, mid-level managers and directors in the United States. And so, we're just looking at 1% market share. So mentoring 1,000 guys. Who's doing the mentoring for these mid-level guys? So we're looking to partner with guys, brothers in the C-suite, basically senior executives, VP, SVP, EVP, C-level, maybe some board role guys, and break it down by industry, 20 different industries, leading industries, and getting fireside chat speakers every month. So quick math, it breaks down to 240 Black men in senior leadership that are mentoring 6,000 mid-level guys. And in addition to that, guys that sign up for the program get a monthly coaching cohort with a Black male executive coach, 8 to 12 guys in that cohort. So we're just trying to offer this broader community initiative to provide mentorship, because we've all been on LinkedIn and I've seen so many guys say two things. Number one, there aren't enough mentors, Black male senior leadership mentors, number one. And number two, that those guys are gatekeepers. They're the wrong ones. They want to be the only one. They want it for themselves. They don't want space for anyone else. And it turns out that those are I don't want to be, I'm a little dramatic. Those are the enemies for the mid-level guys. Mm-hmm. And I'm just like, no, trust me. I talk to those guys. They want to help. They don't have time to vet you and the other 99 DMs they got that month to see who they're going to help, who's not. They don't have the bandwidth. So you get ignored. So I'm curious from that programmatic perspective. We can't do it all, but how does it sound? What do you think we're missing? What do you think would make it more attractive to mid-level guys? So it's a it's just of course I'm going to sign up and give $6,000 a year to this program.
So I think that's definitely a great initiative, and you know, Julie, we talk. So it's, for me, it's a little different, and I realized this from different programs that I was in. Me being in DC and the DMV, that's all we see. We got like I see Black executives, I see Black senior leaders, and they're somewhat accessible, but the easiest way to see, like, to get to them is you got to be in the rooms that they're in. You got to be in the conferences they're in. You got to be in the hangout sessions that they're in, whether if it's a happy hour, whether if it's a conference, like, it's literally just being there. In other areas or other states, other regions, I think it's literally the physical presence is necessary. Just like how you were just saying about, like, you're reaching out to somebody and they're, trying to get to their DMs. It's still somewhat tough for them, and to be able to have a physical location where everybody can really just sit down, especially as men, because at the end of the day, you want to have that safe space. Giving everybody that opportunity to have that safe space to really sit down and really chop it up.
Yep.
That I know that changes the game, because I've other organizations and other groups that I've probably been around, the most impactful spaces have been the ones that were pretty much in person.
Okay.
I think
oh, go ahead.
Well, so I was just saying that. So I hesitate. I didn't immediately answer because I don't know that I have an answer directly, Jewel, to your question of what would be the thing or the setup things that would encourage a mid-level leader to invest $6,000 and sort of have in their mind that they've overcome whatever barriers that they've traditionally seen and kind of connecting with executive leaders. And I think the one thing that comes to mind is, how do we make these mid-level folks believers in what they've just invested in as quick as possible?
Okay, I like that.
You know what I mean? So how do we close the time between the commitment that they've made and their exposure, like making it as real as possible as soon as possible? So how do we close the gap between the time they've made that investment and their exposure to the type of top level leader that they are expecting to get? That's
I like that.
about as sharp of an answer as I have for you right now. It's a big question, and I really have to kind of think through that.
So I'm just kind of thinking through, and thank you guys for entertaining this. I'm actually trying to get answers to stuff I can, apply on this kind of larger level. Haven't done something like this before, but I'm an adventurous spirit, and
Mhm.
so I want to give it a try. But I think we could probably work on that in terms of, I don't know, maybe, I mean, it could potentially be quick. I don't know, maybe they're doing the onboarding call, or it's within one day, 24 hours, 48 hours. Uh, I'm not quite sure how that would work,
I mean,
but
even if it's something to where, like, it's a pretty quick scheduling thing. So maybe it's not the conversation that happens immediately, but it's like the activity occurs pretty quickly. So, like, pretty quickly after the investment, you will be in touch with, I don't know, someone's admin or whatever, like the sort of the wheels of getting you synced up with someone, like that starts to feel like it's something
got
real
it.
pretty fast. You know what I mean?
So I think the onboarding process, we can make that kind of definitely within 24 hours. So let's say they drop their 6K, we get a notification. It triggers a set of emails that get sent on which coaching cohort they're applying to them. We could definitely do that within 24 hours. Even if the response is kind of canned from the
Yeah,
coach,
yeah,
we could make it seem personalized.
yeah,
And yeah, there might be a couple of other things we could do, but um, or scheduling that onboarding call as soon as they pay. Here's the link to your onboarding call where you get to learn how to use the community, uh, schedule events that are going to be most impactful for you, and an introduction to your exec. Yeah, I'm just thinking through it in real
yeah,
time, the onboarding piece, but that's helpful.
yeah.
I was
Absolutely.
I've been a part of a couple of groups where for various things where it's been like a being able to have like a lunch and learn type of thing where it's like you're with that person and they get to speak or share some type of thought or whatever it is, or speak again, just being able to have like that lunch or that dinner with them to be able to connect in person in real time, just like they would with anybody else. And even kind of thinking through like, okay, um, what would it look like to maybe have like the cohort like shadow that person, right? Like, could that be something that's organized? Like, hey, being able to get out to wherever that person is or whatever, in your area or anything, and be able to actually shadow that person for a day or shadow that person once a quarter, whatever it might be.
Yeah,
Just to be able to kind of get in that, be able to feel what it's like to be in their shoes, what their day to day looks like, um, and kind of be able to experience that from their angle. I think is also that's something that I've been a part of before in other groups that has been nice and helpful, made me feel like I'm getting something from this.
yeah,
I think that's really important in person and shadowing. So two things immediately come to mind. The first one is, so let's just say we focus on aerospace defense, and we have the monthly speaker, and so guys get access to that, right? It's just like show up, just like this, you get access, cool. But maybe once a year, all of those speakers meet in one place for a nice dinner, like really nice. And we rent out the place, private space, and we invite the guys that are in that cohort or in that industry to come. And so they get to hobnob and mingle with those individuals that were speakers not one on one, but in person. That's an opportunity to kind of, do the in person thing. But another one, to speak to what you just said, great recommendation, by the way, great suggestion, is something I call on sites, and not definitely not something I made up, but as opposed to off sites. And so let's say the guy works at Northrop Grumman, and so our guys could potentially fly in, go to Northrop, and spend maybe not the whole day, might be a whole day or a half day or something with that senior leader. and kind of experience what it's like to be him in that space. Now, I get it. Aerospace defense, there's going to be clearance, kind of issue. So maybe it's just in a very large conference room, our guys come in 20, 30, 40, 50, however many we have, and we get to meet with that C-level guy for 2 hours and then have drinks or something after. But I think to your all's points, having in-person, face-to-face opportunities might be the highest draw for guys that are forking over 6K.
Yeah.
It's very helpful.
Yeah.
I think it's a beautiful idea, Jewel, and I think that
I love the concept. Like, I think it's absolutely amazing. Yeah. Yeah.
I think there'd be a lot of people that would get benefit from that. So yeah, as we're kind of going into this, has been an awesome discussion. Brandon, I'll leave it to you if you have any closing words or any last thoughts that you wanted to share. This has been really rich, and I think there's been a lot of value given. So I'm excited for the recording to come out. But just want to toss it over to you for any last words.
Yeah, no, thanks for that, Jonathan. And I think the only other thing, if you could just progress to the next couple of slides here, I just want to sort of at least capture this for the recording, right? And this is sort of a summation of what I've said probably, 10 times here over the last hour, right? Is that this is not a terminal activity, right? With the finite stage, right? And so I just want to make sure that folks understand, if we focus on consistently thinking about strategies, these are strategies that aren't just useful for career change, they're useful also for career management and career growth and all the things that many of us has heard folks preach to us over the course of our careers, right? But what it gives you the ability to do is activate it if you desire at any time. So almost like insurance, right? You pay into it, you invest into it. You don't use it every day, but should the time come where you do, it's there. So I just want to leave folks with that, and then if you could go to the next slide, there it's just my info for anyone that wants, as you're looking over the recording, if you want to capture that, these are all the ways to get in touch with me. I'm also on LinkedIn. I probably should have put that on there as well, but I'm easily found on there. It's my first and last name, with the /in and then / my first and last name. And you can easily point to me also as well. So I just want to thank everyone. And first of all, thank you again for this opportunity to speak to the group. And if there's any desires whatsoever to reach out to me, have further conversations, I'm happy to speak with anyone. Again, I don't have many answers, but I've got a bunch of I've got a bunch of thought leadership type ideas and a bunch of strategies, and I'm always happy to talk through them. So thanks again.
Awesome. Thanks, Brandon. And I appreciate you being generous with your time. Thank you for that. And, definitely looking forward to continuing this conversation in the chat, and being able to toss in some takeaways and, get this recording out for everyone to digest. So hope you have a good night. Jacob, Jewel, glad you guys made it on. And I hope you guys have a good one. Enjoy the rest of your Monday and your week.